You are listening to Meet the Thriller Author, the podcast where I interview writers of mysteries, thrillers, and suspense books. I am your host, Alan Peterson, and this is episode number 107. In this episode of the podcast, we'll be meeting Tracy Clark, who is a native Chicagoan who writes mysteries set in her hometown while working as an editor in the newspaper industry. She's a graduate of Mundelein College, where she earned a Bachelor of Arts degree, and the University of Illinois in Chicago, where she earned her MA. Since reading her first Nancy Drew mystery, Tracy has dreamed of crafting mysteries of her own, mysteries that feature strong, intelligent, independent female characters and those who share their world. Cass Raines, ex-cop turned intrepid PI, is such a character. In addition to her Cass Raines novels, Tracy's short story, For Services Rendered, appears in an anthology, Shades of Black, Crime and Mystery Stories by African-American authors. Her latest book, What You Don't See, is her third in her Chicago mystery series. It was released on May 26, 2020. And we're going to talk with Tracy about her latest book, her writing process, and a whole lot more. So stay tuned for my interview coming up with Tracy Clark. Before we get to the interview, I want to tell you about Masterclass, a great site where you can learn from the best. They have some amazing writing legends that are on Masterclass right now. And so you can go over there at thrillingreads.com/masterclass. It's a great way to support the podcast and learn from the best.
I have writer's block. I cannot write.
First draft is pure torture for me. I hate every second of it.
It's a daunting thing to start a book.
There were some dark times when I wasn't actually sure I could accomplish this.
Sounds like something that you can do nothing about. That, of course, isn't true.
If you're not sure what to write, write the wrong thing a few times, and let that be the process by which you find the right thing.
Human beings are storytelling creatures. Stories are vital.
What you should be doing right now is sitting down to start writing immediately.
You become a writer by writing. There is no other way.
I'm Neil Gaiman.
I'm Shonda Rhimes.
I'm Dan Brown.
I'm Margaret Atwood, and this is my masterclass.
Check out those masterclasses and a whole lot more over at thrillingreads.com/masterclass. All right, here's my interview with Tracy Clark. Hi, everybody. This is Alan Peterson with Meet the Thriller Author. And on the phone, I have Tracy Clark. Tracy's a native Chicagoan who writes mysteries set in her hometown while working as an editor in the newspaper industry. Her latest novel, What You Don't See, is the third book in the Chicago mystery series featuring ex-homicide cop turned PI Cassandra Raines, which has her teaming up with a former partner to protect the celebrity from a deadly stalker. So we'll talk about all that good stuff here in a moment. Tracy, welcome. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Hi, Alan. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So can you tell our listeners a bit about your background, your journey that got you to where you are now, publishing these books?
Oh, I don't know. It's been a pretty long journey for me. I think I started writing actively maybe in high school or so. So I'm trial and error all through that. And first job, I sort of worked in communications and went from that to a features magazine. I went from there to the alderman's office. I worked there for a time, all the while I'm writing. So, sort of going through these jobs and at the back of my mind, knowing that I wanted to write books, but not quite getting there yet. So it's been quite a journey. Now I work in the newspaper industry, and of course that's challenging. So I sort of edit during the day and then write whenever I can. So the books sort of get done slowly in between other things. So it's kind of a sort of dual existence, but sort of making it so far.
And so you've always dreamed to be a writer? So it seems like your whole life has been in writing, huh?
Yeah. So when you look back over your childhood and such, you sort of see where the sort of line starts. And I think I sort of started writing before I actually started writing. I would play with my Barbie dolls, but my Barbie dolls had never had like tea parties or anything like that. They were all ways, running from the cops or hiding in a barn somewhere, robbing a bank. So that I sort of did that sort of fantasy play, not realizing that I was sort of in the crime fiction area. And I only realized that as I looked back over sort of trying to figure out where this all started. But I was always that kind of kid. So I went from that to sort of reading Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, and I just sort of stayed in that sort of lane. And now I got to the point now where that's my gig. But I always had that it's sort of a twisted sort of a thing in my head. That's where my sweet spot was.
Yeah, it sounds similar too, because I used to do that with my toys when I was a kid too. I would blow them up and set them on fire.
Right. Barbie was always on the lam, always sort of running from people or robbing. It was weird stuff. And I only realized that now at this point, sort of looking back, that it was not quite normal. That's not usually how most people stay with their Barbies. And, but to sort of get me in that sort of frame of mind before I even started concentrating on developing a story, developing characters, figuring out what I might want to write about. I always knew that sort of crime spot was my little thing.
Is that why you went? I think you went into for journalism. Is you just trying to learn
Well, I think when you're a writer, or at least for me, just sort of, you want to be that, but you really don't see anybody around you that's that, and you don't have that sort of as a thing to sort of aspire to. So I think in the back of my mind, I wanted to be a writer, but you still have to work. You still have to pay bills. So I sort of I had English communications as my major in school and also grad school. So I sort of looking at PR and advertising when I sort of graduated, but it bored me to death when I actually got to the point where I had to make a decision about that being my career path. And I just sort of happened to go into editing for newspaper syndication, and I kind of liked that because I was reading all day. Reading op-eds and doing comic strips and puzzles and stuff like that. And it was kind of interesting. Every day was different. And at the back of my mind, there was this thing that would not sort of go away, and that was writing books and writing crime fiction. So I did sort of half and half, then 3/4, 1/4, and then finally got to the point where I'm going to make the commitment, I'm going to do it, see how far I can go with it, and we'll see what happens.
And so now your latest book is What You Don't See, and that's like the third book in the Chicago Mystery Series, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So how did that series come together, and your latest novel, how did this all come together for you?
I think the voice of this main character has been with me for quite a while. I think back in those sort of Barbie doll days, when Barbie's running from the cops, that sort of snarky, sort of badass sort of character sort of started there. So when I sort of thought about what I would write about, where I would set it, what it would be about, that voice was always in my head. So I just started from there. As to the story itself for the third book, let's see, the antagonist in that one is sort of based on a real person. So that was there. And then I just sort of built a story around that. So the character was there first. The main character's been with me for a while. And then I sort of created an interplay between the two of them and sort of built a story.
And do you see yourself in Cassandra Raines or any of the other characters?
Not really. She's far braver than I am. The half the things she does, what are you doing? I can't imagine myself doing stuff like that, but it's fun to sort of dream about it and sort of create these scenarios for her, as long as it's safe for me.
Yes, yeah, for the safety of our behind our computers.
I never move from the chair. Everything's safe and sound for me. And then she has these adventures, which are kind of interesting to sort of go along with.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool too. When I was preparing for the interview, you were in one of your short stories was featured in an anthology for Services Rendered. And it was The Shades of Black Crime and Mystery Stories by African American authors. And so your story was featured there, like with Walter Mosley and other great authors. How did that come together, and how was it working in an anthology like that?
That was a cool thing. Eleanor Taylor Bland was a friend of mine. I met her at one of the Dark and Stormy Night conferences way back. I was still in school. And I would go every year to these conferences to try to learn how to craft a story. We learned about voice and setting and character development and all that. So I went for a few years without ever writing anything. I was just going to see what it was all about, how we would do it. And as part of that, there was like a critique session where you could sort of have a published writer look at your stuff and tell you whether or not it's crap or not. And Eleanor was one of the people who looked at my writing and said, yeah, I think it's pretty good. Here's my number. Call me when you have the next bit of it, and I'll take a look at that too. And a friendship sort of developed with that. And when she was sort of putting the anthology together, she asked me if I would submit a short story for it. And I said, heck yeah. I mean, who would say no to that? That short story was the first thing I had ever written full out, all the way through, beginning, middle, and end. And that was the voice, that main character that was in my head for all those years. And it was just sort of a practice thing to see whether or not I could tell a complete story, whether or not I could sort of get all of those moving pieces together, pacing, setting, character development, all of it. And so that was for services rendered. And she put it in the anthology, and I was tickled pink and still am. And I sort of went from there. With that sort of as my foundation, I said, well, that wasn't so hard. Maybe if I could write that, I can write a whole novel. Dumb, but that took a few more years after that point. But it was sort of a foundation. I got in the anthology, was tickled pink about it, and that sort of set me off on really sort of buckling down and seeing whether or not I could put a full novel together using that character, different name, different sort of backstory. I sort of developed that as I went along. But it started there. So that short story and then full blown.
And what's your writing process then? Like when you sit down to write your novel, what's your writing day like?
Well, before the pandemic, I would go to work and I would sort of break for my lunch, and that 1 hour was my writing session for the afternoon, and then I would go home and write another maybe 2 or 3 hours in addition to that. Being home all day long now, I still have the work, so I sort of work from home, and I sort of keep to that same schedule. So I work in the morning, get up early, maybe get a couple hours in, break for lunch, get another hour in, and then at the end of the day, maybe 2 or 3 hours more. And so it's sort of segmented writing sessions, but it sort of slowly gets me through the entire thing. I just finished book 4 now. I have until the 1st of July to hand that in, and I'm just sort of reading over it again one more time just to make sure I haven't made any monumental mistakes. And, so that's how I do it. It's slow. I write really slow because I'm sort of particular about how the sentences sound and sort of how they sort of trip off the tongue. So that takes a little while. Other people sort of write really fast and really zip through and then they go back and they sort of refine. I sort of refine as I go, really slowly as baby steps, so that when I get to the end of the manuscript, it's pretty clean. It's just a matter of me going back and layering in things, putting clues in where I sort of missed them out the first time. So slow and then maybe a little faster and then slow again. So my final pass. So yeah, it's quite a thing.
Well, you have the editor background too, probably, so you probably can't turn that off.
Yeah, and I think the advice really is for writing is just breeze through, just leave the wayward commas and all the rest of it. I can't do it. My brain can't do it. If I leave a comma or a semicolon out of space, it just throws me off. So I have to fix it while I'm there and then go on. I can't push on and then have to come back and have this big mess waiting for me. I sort of do it as I go along. I know that's probably the weirdest way to do it, or most people don't do it that way, but that's just the way my brain works.
No, but I like that too, because like you said, then you have a much cleaner draft. Because I finished and I'm like, I know I have to go back and look at a mess. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, that's the part I don't like. I don't like having to have that mess waiting for me, like a big mountain sort of overshadowing you. I think when I get to the end, I'm pretty sure that I've got a really sort of solid paced beginning, middle, and end. And it's just a matter of me going back and maybe layering in a few things here, adding a clue here, maybe even adding a character that I might need. But basically the story is there. Everything sort of works together. There aren't any wayward commas or misspelled words usually. So it's easier when I get to the end. But it's slow getting there.
And do you outline before, or do you like right from the seat of your pants?
I'm one of the pantsers. Probably the weird way to do it, really, because you don't have any outline or no guideposts or anything like that. I sort of begin where Cass's case begins. Somebody walks into her office with a problem, and that's where I start. And I would sort of follow it logically as to what would be her first step, where would she go next, who would she question, so I'm sort of in it as she's in it. And I find that when I do it that way, just for my brain, all these interesting sort of creative things sort of pop out, and give you these weird angles that you didn't think about before. So it's sort of an adventure for me too.
I'm always curious about what writers use. What tools do you use? Do you use like Microsoft Word or something else?
I just use Word to start at page 1 and go all the way to the end. I know there are all these little bells and whistles that writers use and sort of outlining things. I don't do any of that. It just confuses me.
Well, it's working, obviously.
It's just me, Microsoft Word, the seat I'm sitting in, and the laptop. That's it.
And do you usually write in the same spot when you're writing, or do you like to mix it up a little bit?
Well, before the pandemic, I had I had one specific sort of huddle room, they call them. I would go in there every day. That room, that seat, that desk, that was mine for that 1 hour. Now I sort of sit wherever I need to. Couch, bed, table, any place that's quiet.
Yeah, that is something with the pandemic. How we
Yeah, it's weird.
You can't do it the way you used to do things, obviously.
It's kind of throwing me off, but I'm dealing with it, you know.
Yeah. And do you still find time to read mysteries and thrillers?
Yeah. Once I'm done with my sessions at the end of the day, I read until I sort of turn in for the bed. I read in that genre. I like crime fiction, PI novels. I love. So anything in that, but I'm not sort of held to that. I like reading everything. I've got a stack of TBR hopefuls right there that I'm looking at right now that I can't wait to get to. And I just sort of read slowly as I have time for it. And then when I finish that one, I grab another one, pluck one off the top of the list, and then go from there. There's so much exciting stuff coming out.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, the to be read pile just keeps getting bigger, but it's fun though.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And so, which authors do you think influence you the most as a writer?
Well, in the PI stories, I read a lot of Agatha Christie. She's got her Tommy and Puppets Beresford PI team, Hercule Poirot, of course, Nancy Drew. And then we sort of got into the mid-'80s when all the female crime writers came along. Sarah Koretsky, Sarah Sue Grafton, Marcia Miller. So all of those, Valerie Wilson Wesley, now Kristen Lepianka. I love that Roxane Wary series. So I read everything.
And so so you said you just finished the 4th book. Are there going to be more books with Cass Raines in the future?
I don't know. We'll see. I turn this one in on the 1st of July, and we'll see what they do from there. I'm only contracted for the 4th, so either I'll have another one or I'll do something else.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, some of these things are out of our hands.
Right, exactly.
And have you published other books besides this series?
Nope, this is it. This is the first foray into the publishing industry, and so far so good.
Yeah, it's been exciting. This is your 4th book already, so you can have a pro now.
It is exciting. And it's a lot of fun being in sort of the writer community. They talk about the writer community, but it's really close, and everybody's so nice and supportive of everybody else, and I like that part of it. It's now learning how to market and promote and do all that fun stuff, which is not really in my sort of wheelhouse, but slowly but surely I'm getting there, and it's an experience.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, any advice for writers out there who are listening to this? I have a lot of aspiring writers that listen to this podcast.
You know what? The only real rock solid advice I have for any writer is to just keep pushing along. It took me, more than 30 years to get from first initial writing for that short story before that to my first book deal, almost 30 years. If I gave it up halfway through, I wouldn't be here. It's persistence. It's knowing that you have something, sticking to that, and pushing forward no matter what kind of rejections you get or all the negativity that's out there, because it's out there. But just to have to believe in that you've got something, you want it, and you're going to do it. And that's the best advice I can give any writer.
And then readers can find more about you. You have at your website, TracyClarkBooks.com.
Yep. That's it. And I'm also on Twitter and Facebook and all that fun stuff.
Okay. And so, please do go check Tracy out. And what you don't see is out, came out May 26th, so it's out already. So people should go check that out. Okay. Well, Tracy, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed talking with you.
It's a lot of fun. Thanks so much, Alan.
Thanks for listening to the Meet the Thriller Author podcast. Be sure to visit thrillerauthors.com to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover great thrilling reads. If you enjoy the podcast, I'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review to it, wherever it is that you're listening to this podcast, be it iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, wherever it is that you're listening to this right now. I would appreciate it. And please do check out my own thriller novels over at my website at alanpeterson.com. Until next time.